Hey guys, so yesterday I had my ABS light come on randomly. It was on the highway, I wasn't turning or anything, and a lot of things online said you might need to clean or replace your sensors. So for starters, I'm going to see if it comes on again. Yep, it looks like it's going to stay on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jack up each side of my front end and check for wheel bearing movement. And then if that's good, I'm going to start on the driver's side, take off the tire, the brake caliper, and the rotor, and clean and or replace the sensor. I have two used OEM ones laying around, so we'll just see when we get there. So right now I'm just going to jack up the front until the tire's off the ground, and then I can just test whether or not my wheel bearing has any play. Probably have to disengage the four-wheel drive, that'd be smart. So what I'm testing for is any sort of movement. Oh yeah, that's bad wheel bearing. Okay, I have the other side jacked up. I'm going to test for the same thing. That one's good. So we're dealing with the driver's side wheel bearing. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is bust this wheel off. I have locking wheel lug nuts, so it's going to take me a second. All right, so I have the tire off, control arms jacked up. I have jack stands on either side for safety. The first thing I'm going to do is get the caliper and caliper bracket off. I'll let you know what size those bolts are here in a second. All right, so the bolts I'm going to go after are right here for the caliper. And at the bottom, where is it? Right there, the one on the left. Those are 21 millimeters. All right, so I got both of these caliper bolts removed from the back. It should pop off, and then do my best just to sit it up here. Without twisting that brake line so much, and then I'm going to grab a zip tie, and I'm going to zip tie this up out of the way just for safety. Just caps off. I'm pretty sure the rotor can actually come free. I'm gonna get a soft little mallet. Yep, that's a 36 millimeter. So we're gonna go ahead and get that taken off, and then we'll work on the 4 bolts on the back. All right, so I already gotten this CV axle nut broken loose. It's gonna be on there pretty tight, but I used a pry bar and put it between my my lug nut posts here, and we're just gonna go ahead and take this off. All right, so I got the CV axle nut taken off. We're going after these 4 bolts now. There's one here, one there, and one right there. They're going to be 15 millimeter and they're probably going to be on there tight. So I'm going to get after it. So what I like to do is I went around and I broke all 4 loose first, and now I'm going to back them all out, and then you can remove your hub. All right, so with removing those 4 bolts, you can kind of see through the brake shield. And loosening the CV axle nut, it came out really without a problem. I'm just a guy in my garage, I'm not a mechanic. It took me about 30-ish minutes with recording. So I'm going to go down to Napa where I bought it. This is an SFK unit, so it should have a lifetime warranty. And I'll put the new one on when I get back. All right, so I'm back from Napa. They warrantied it without any problems. Before I stick it in, I'm going to go ahead and get a rag, and I'm going to clean up this knuckle, the inside of the knuckle, the best I can before I stick the new unit in. All right, so I got a rag, and unfortunately the only thing I have is some alcohol. Usually probably want to use brake parts cleaner. My truck's in the garage and I can't access my cabinets over there that has it, so I'm going to go ahead and get this cleaned up and then bring you back. All right, this is the new SFK wheel bearing. I'm going to put the the brake shield on, making sure to wire this properly, and then we'll get it bolted back up. Okay, so I just put 2 bolts in the back for now, loosely fitted, just to kind of hold the brake shield on for me. I am going to get this in there. You might have to wiggle it a little bit because the CV shaft might not want to seat right away. There we go. Try to get at least a couple threads threaded in before I get too far. See, this needs to be down and around, pushed through the back like that. And then that can be out there. I forgot to mention, if you're going to reuse your factory bolts or your stock bolts without buying new ones, just run them through a little cheek poker real quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run these bolts down. I'm just going to put a little dab of blue Loctite. I'm sure some people will use red, but unfortunately, I'm sure these is going to have to be redone again at some point. So blue is going to have to do. All right, I got 2 bolts in. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the other 2 bolts, and then I'll come back. All right, so I got the other bolts cleaned up in the wire wheel. Just going to add a little bit of blue thread locker. Get them started. I'm just using a Milwaukee electric ratchet. I'll go ahead and torque them. I'll let you guys know the torque specs. I'm not going to say what I think it is because I don't want to be wrong, but I'll come back when I have those numbers for you guys, and we'll go ahead and torque them down. All right, I just went and put the CV axle nut back on. So this is going to be 170 foot-pounds. The hub bolts are going to be 130 foot-pounds. And the ears for the brake caliper are going to be 80 foot-pounds. So I'm going to get the rotor back on, pull out the torque wrench, and then start torquing. All right, so torquing the CV nut. Okay, that's on there tight. I'm going to go to 130 foot-pounds and do the 4 hub bolts on the back. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the brake rotor on. Make sure that seats properly, and it does. It's good to put a lug nut on or 2 to hold this in the correct position all the way up against the hub so you can put the brake caliper on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab 2 lug nuts. Okay, so I have 2 zip ties holding my brake caliper in place. So I'm going to clip them. And then I'm going to rotate it, making sure that I don't bend or move this brake line in any sort of weird or odd way. And then go ahead and take your bolts that are cleaned up and reinstall the hardware. And torque them to 80 foot-pounds. Okay, again, I'm reusing these caliper bolts, so I'm going to put it through the wire wheel, get them cleaned up a little bit, and then go ahead and reinstall it. All right, once you get your caliper bolts cleaned up in the wire wheel, I'm just going to put just a dab of blue Loctite on each one. Get them started. They should be able to thread in easily. I like to get at least one in before I do anything, just so I know it's more secure, cleaned up. Just another little dab of blue Loctite. Again, some people are going to want to use red. I know I'm going to have to do brake pads at some point, so I'm keeping that in mind before I go crazy. Okay, those are threaded in pretty much by hand. And now we'll go ahead and I'll torque them to 80 foot-pounds, and then we'll move to this wire. All right, so I got both the 21mm caliper bolts snugged up with just a ratchet. Now we'll go in with the torque wrench to 80 foot-pounds. Okay, that's one. And I'm going to try to sneak through this side so I'm not messing with the brake line as much for the caliper. And that's it. I'm going to wire up the ABS sensor. There's just a little plug right here. Plug right in. I'll probably add a couple zip ties to make sure everything's out of the way. Then we can go for a test drive. I'll put the dust cover back on as well. All right, so I'm getting ready to put the tire back on. I got my ABS wheel sensor all hooked up. I might change the positioning of it. I want to check full range of movement, but I can't do that in the garage. But I'm going to put a dab of just normal anti-seize, just a little dab on each one of the lugs before I go ahead and put the tire back on. All right, so it's time for me to torque my lug nuts. I'm going to torque them to between 120 and 140 foot-pounds. I'm going to remove my jack stands and lower it down on the ground. Obviously, the tire's going to move if I don't do that. And then I'll go for a test drive. Hopefully that ABS light will be off. All right, wheels all torqued back on. I'm going to go ahead and straighten out my wheels, back out of the garage, and we'll go ahead and take it on a test drive. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start it up. ABS light is still on. I don't know if I have to drive it for a second for that to go away or what's going to go on, but I'm going to back out of the garage, go for a drive, see what happens. All right, guys, I just got home, pulled into the garage. ABS light is still off, so hopefully everything there is fixed. Wasn't expecting the wheel bearing to go bad. It's about 6-7 years old. Like I said, the brain was SFK, but Napa warrantied it, no problem, so it didn't cost me any money, just time and labor. But that's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching.